Hey guys, welcome back. It's time for another installment in my Kellerman vlog. If you don't know what that is, I tend to reread the books, murder mystery books by author Jonathan Kellerman, and I do it as kind of a stress reliever and just have something familiar and relaxing as part of my day. The same reason why I know a lot of people rewatch The Office. I think is a very popular TV show to rewatch, and I reread these books for the same reason. And as with people who reread and rewatch the same things, I get very invested in the characters, in the plots, in questions that are left unanswered, in plot holes, perhaps, or just things that bother me. And I want to discuss them with other people that might feel the same way I do, or might feel differently, but as strongly. So if that's you, I need to make sure that you comment so that we can have the discussion. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk. So, next book in the series here is Survival of the Fittest. This is definitely one of my favorites because it reintroduces the character from the Butcher's Theater of Daniel Sharavi. And by the way, I'm going to say his name wrong a bunch of times. I keep saying Shavari. I have just very enough mild dyslexia that I switch those letters, and so I've been reading it as Shavari for decades now, probably. I think I started reading these books, at least early adulthood, if not before adulthood. So if I say Shavari, it is what it is. I know it's Sharavi. So let's give a brief synopsis of the book. And again, these vlogs are not designed for people who have not read the book. They are meant to be for other people who have read it to discuss. And there might be spoilers, so it really isn't advisable if you haven't read the book, but just in case. So Alex Delaware is a child psychologist, and he consults the LAPD, specifically to LAPD Detective Milo Sturgis. And in this book, Milo has a case that's been transferred to him. It's a very sensitive case. The developmentally disabled and partially deaf daughter of an Israeli diplomat has been brutally murdered. And the previous detectives on the case did not get very far, and their careers suffered for it. And so Milo was brought in to, be the hero, and if he doesn't deliver, then his career will suffer for it as well, because this is very politically charged. The diplomat whose daughter was murdered is very well connected, etc., etc. And throughout the course of the book, I don't know how much to give away, but they discover that there are other people with disabilities that are being murdered, and they all have some sort of disability, developmental or otherwise, and they're all non-white. So it appears to be some sort of subtle ethnic cleansing that's happening, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. And they are aided by Israeli detective Daniel Sharavi, who was the lead detective in the book Butcher's Theater, who's quite possibly my favorite Kellerman character of all time. I really like that character. He's Yemeni, and I didn't know much about Yemen or the people of Yemen before reading Butcher's Theater, and I learned quite a bit from that book, and then because of that book, I learned more. So let's get into my notes. Let's see, what do I got here? This is one of my favorite books, yep, said that already, because it reintroduces Sharavi, yep, said that already, who's my favorite character Kellerman created, yep, said that already. Obviously, I love Alex and Milo, and this book has all three. I believe this book also introduces Petra Conner. Oh, I forgot about that. I'm glad I made a note about that, because Petra Conner, she's another detective. I'm glad that Kellerman started to become more comfortable writing women. I think he doesn't always nail it, but I think it's good. And Petra, again, she's not my favorite character, but I like her, and I'm glad that she was introduced. Another thing that makes this one of my favorite books, I feel like Kellerman is at his best when he's writing books where evil confronts bigotry, or evil mixed with bigotry, rather. Where it's not just an issue of a murder. Oh no, I lost my temper and killed my wife, but there's definitely an evil lurking beneath the surface. And he often ties that with racism, sexism, homophobia. Seems like most evil people are also bigots. And I guess you could argue that bigots are, by nature, evil people. So it makes a lot of sense, and Kellerman does a really good job of writing this. Okay, so let's get on to the notes. Busted some Rodney. This is an expression that I think like a young black criminal uses in referencing a the police, and I don't think that's a real expression. I feel like Kellerman made it up to try to sound like what a young black criminal would sound like, and he did a bad job of it. But maybe there are people out in California say busted some Rodney, and I just have never heard it before. Okay. Helena, this book, Lucy, previous book, and Tanya, future book, all remind me of each other. It's a character archetype. Remember how I talked about in my notes for self-defense? No, it was in my notes for, I don't know, one of the other books. I talked about how Hope Devane and Dr. Grace Blades and Claire Argent all remind me of each other. Kellerman has these certain archetypes that he writes that I'm not mad at. Like, I like them. They're distinctively different, but they're distinctively the same archetype, and I feel like he does a good job there. And again, sometimes I complain that he reuses certain things. This is not a complaint. This is not a criticism. Helena, Lucy, and Tanya all remind me of each other, and I don't mind it at all. Okay. The book references, somebody's listening to hip-hop music, and Kellerman describes it as an ugly rant that passed for poetry. And that all sounds awfully bigoted or biased against hip-hop. Does Kellerman have a bias against hip-hop? I recall in another book someone says, give it to a rap thug. And thug is a loaded word now. I don't know if it was then, or if at least we realized that it was. Probably it always has been. But I don't think we necessarily realized until the recent, post George Zimmerman discussions that it is in fact a loaded word that has, racist connotations. But I kind of feel like maybe Kellerman has an anti-hip-hop bias. I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Okay, and I'm probably saying his name wrong. Rune Lemon, is that how you say his name? He reminds me a lot of Will Towell. If you've read the very first Delaware book, Will Towell is a primary character of that. And Will Towell he's connected with the villains, but he's not essentially a villain himself. Rune Lemon is a little bit more of an actual villain, but they definitely remind me of each other. Okay. Anytime Alex says, why have I driven all the way here for this, it means that whatever he drove there for is connected with the bad guys, or whatever person he was talking to. Because he said that when he came to visit Will Towell. Why did he bring me all the way here for nothing? It's because he was connected with the bad guys and he wanted to feel out what Alex knew. Why did Rune Lemon bring him all the way there? It's because he was connected with the bad guys and he wanted to know what Alex knew. So anytime Alex says to himself, why have I driven all the way here for this? Or, why did they waste my time like this? That's a clue. Alex, you should know that means they're connected with the bad guys. Okay. So Alex gives a very in-depth eugenics lecture that's just him talking to the reader. You could argue it's Kellerman talking to the reader. And normally I would fact-check something like that, but it's several pages long with multiple book references, and just frankly, I did not feel like going through that much research. But I do want to know how much of it is actually accurate, historically and scientifically. It has the ring of accuracy, and Kellerman's certainly no slouch in his field, so I'm assuming it is. But it could be literary invention as well, so maybe at some point I will research it. But if you happen to know, I want to know. Okay. In the last book, I mentioned how much Kellerman loves writing blowhards. Maybe that was 2 books ago, but definitely in the recent vlogs, I mentioned I was talking about Buck Lowell. And Xena, in this book, talks like Buck Lowell. They would have been perfect for each other. They should have dated. At the end, Milo is made a special case detective at the community outpost with the promise of lieutenant. So how is this different than the supposedly big, bad, bold promotion that Broussard gave him in a future book? It really seems like the same thing. It's one of those things where it happens in one book, and then in the next book, it didn't happen, and it happens again. And then in the next book, it didn't happen, and it happens again. And that bothers me a little, continuity error. Okay. I know I've said it before, but I want Sharavi to return. And at the end of this book, he invites Alex to visit Israel, and I really wish that would have happened. I would have loved to have read that book. The scenes with Xena make me uncomfortable. I get that they're supposed to, but I want to skip past them. Like other pretentious, and in her case, oversexed characters in these books, I get the kind of are people really like this vibes? But Xena rings a little more true to me than some of the others. I've known some Xenas. And yeah, they make me just as awkward in person as they do in the books. I hope Milo's driver wasn't punished. I hope that didn't interfere with his goals for promotion. Really, the whole end of the book, from Xena on, is a downer to me. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it or isn't some of Kellerman's best work. It's just not a fun ending. Okay, so let's see what we have to look forward to next. Oh, we have a non-series book next. I just want to confirm something about the timeline real quick while I have my computer in front of me and the camera is yet rolling. We'll edit this out in post. This computer is a little bit slower than my main computer. This is my studio computer. And here we go. So I just want to make sure I have the timeline correct. That one, so yeah, Billy Straight is the next book. That's a non-series book. Survival of the Fittest is the one we're reviewing now. The Clinic was before, The Web was before that, and I skip, and I guess I should film a vlog to that. Self-Defense was before that. So yes, it was technically 3 books ago that I was referring to. I said last book. I just wanted to correct that. So, okay, let's talk about Billy Straight next, which is one of the few non-series books, but we also, we discussed those as well, and some of those are my favorites. A Butcher's Theater is one of my favorites. Conspiracy Club is one of my favorites. Billy Straight isn't a favorite, but it's not I don't dislike it, It's a solidly good book. I don't, I don't avoid it. It just doesn't make it to the favorites. But it's a good book, so we're going to discuss that one next. Thanks for watching.